Let's talk more about this with Macua Executive Director Christopher Rutledge. A very good afternoon to you, Chris. Thanks very much for your time. Let's talk first about the importance of this particular inquiry.
Yeah, we are indeed. This inquiry is absolutely critical that we understand exactly what happened at Stilfontein. Close to 100 people were killed through actions of the state. And so it's absolutely critical that we understand what went wrong and what are the lessons that we need to learn, but also more importantly, who is going to be held accountable for the deaths that occurred at Stilfontein. So we think that's important. We're also very concerned about the way that the police commissioner and others from the police have tried to, I think, confuse the issues. So, for example, in the clip you just played, the commissioner speaks about a figure of 4,500 people. Now, that was the figure that was initially mentioned very early on in November, and then there were people that came out through Margaret Shaft, and ultimately people that were trapped in Shaft 11. The number that we had put forward to the courts, and these are documented on sworn affidavits, are much less than 4,500. We weren't sure how many because there was no intelligence. The police never had intelligence. The community wasn't able to give a clear figure on who was down there because obviously, we were not connected to what was down there. And so we estimated, based on the information that we were able to get, that there were well over 1,000 people. So, even then, the issue around numbers are certainly, I think, a red herring, because the question remains, and the commission asked the commissioner, the national commissioner, whether the police had at any point taken advice from the Department of Health or health experts around what was an acceptable amount of food to provide to people, and nothing like that was done. There was no intelligence. It just was like a cowboy show. They had just gone in guns blazing, to use a metaphor, without understanding what the impacts of the actions would be.
We don't have a particularly good record of actually acting on recommendations of inquiries.
Yes, indeed. That is one of our big concerns. So we would like to know, we are still going to engage with the Human Rights Commission, for example, why Minister Mkhunu has not been called to the hearing. He, as we know, in evidence before the parliamentary committee, that ad hoc committee, that he had been meeting with Brown Mogotse and other figures related to criminal activities, and they had met at the minister's residence to discuss the issue of Stilfontein. So we would like to know what it was that they discussed, and what is the intelligence that they used in order to determine that they were going to smoke these people out. So, there's so many questions that are not coming out in this commission. While we are very appreciative that the commission is having these hearings, we are very concerned that the types of questions that are being put, the way that the ministers have avoided responsibility and are obfuscating their answers, we are concerned that ultimately, even if the commission then does come out with a finding and recommendation, that it will not be taken seriously. We have submitted to the commission and we have made public a history of how departments like the Department of Mineral Resources have just ignored the commission over the years. They seem to be, just not considered as important by the state, and they've not taken recommendations. So we're very concerned about where this will lead to, but we're hoping against hope that this time it will be different. But in the meantime, we are also taking measures to ensure that if the South African government does not hold their own members to account for their actions, which includes the president and the cabinet, who basically came out with a statement that, we will not send food down and we will smoke them out. So that's a cabinet level decision. So we are taking measures to ensure that international instruments that can help us to obtain justice is activated. And so we're not going to wait for the commission to do its work and then to only find out 2 years later that we actually have no resolution on this matter.
Well, speaking of where this process or inquiry may lead to, and of accountability, especially when it comes to members of the executive, you may have seen a screaming headline yesterday, the Sunday Times leading with the story that says, "I'll take the flak on Senzo," saying the president is prepared to do that. And with the history you know only too well, because you're one of those people who have actually criticized the government in the past for its apparent reluctance to actually embrace artisanal mining in South Africa. What hope do you have that they will move or act or are keen on what you deem to be a solution, which is to deal adequately with the issue of artisanal mining in South Africa?
So we are cautiously optimistic that, we've been seeing different comments being made by various people around this question of artisanal mining at different levels of government. And what we are noticing is that there is a steady movement towards our position, which says that artisanal mining cannot only be dealt with through policing. It is not mainly a policing challenge. It is a socio-economic challenge. And with the African Mining Indaba coming up next week, the question of artisanal mining should again be on the agenda, because other African countries have certainly had the same problems. We're not unique. They have started the process of regulating the sector, and they are seeing gains being made. A country like Ghana, for example, who is one of the biggest producers of gold now on the continent, gets 80% of their gold mine in the country through artisanal mining. So, the fact that we still have some people like Mr. Mantashe who want to insist that this is simply a criminal problem, are finding that more and more people are realizing that the problem needs a broader solution. And we invite government to continue to talk to us, to continue to engage with community so that we can find solutions. Because ultimately, I think the other question that Minister Kachalia also raised is the fact that it is communities who ultimately are suffering. It is not the state that is suffering. It is not the mining companies per se, but it is communities that have to be the ones who carry this burden, both of these operators who arm themselves and then terrorize communities, as well as the fact that the question of the environmental impacts are increasingly a problem. So we are cautiously optimistic that there is a toenadering, as they say in Afrikaans, a coming together of ideas around how we need to tackle this going into the future. Not simply going in guns blazing, but find a socio-economic solution in which millions of people potentially can be employed.
But how does it help the government to have a rather simplistic view of this problem, as some people have said? Of what help is reducing this problem to criminality instead of looking at it perhaps a lot more holistically? What's the advantage there?
We've struggled to identify the issue. Like I said, we've spoken to the to the department for more than a decade around this issue. We've made multiple presentations, and it would appear as if the main issue. Look, we understand that most governments, they want to have a centralized place in which they can regulate the sector, and that is good on paper. That's a great idea. But the practical reality is that we no longer have a society in which large-scale mining is the only player in town, as it were. Many of these large-scale mines have left holes in the ground, thousands of holes across the country, and in those holes, there are still remnants of gold and value. At the same time, you have communities sitting atop these mines where poverty is endemic, the unemployment is at a record rate, and the need to find solutions is just absolute. So communities are engaging, whether the minister wants to admit it or not. The communities are engaging in our system. Some of them are benefiting, and some of those benefits are trickling into those communities. So we have to find ways in which we can make those communities part of the solution. So if the communities are able to benefit from what is happening, simply not just be victims of what is, then we can potentially start to turn the tide. Because I think all of the states will admit that we cannot simply police this problem away. So we cannot just use guns to solve the problem. If we bring communities in as part of the solution, then I think we do a number of things. One, start to isolate the people and communities that are
Ish, that line, is giving us problems there. It's not holding up, but thank you very much, Chris, for your contribution to this very important subject. The Human Rights Commission starting today with the second leg of its inquiry. The first leg was between the 1st and the 3rd of October last year, an issue that no doubt is also going to be a big part of conversations next week at the mining Indaba.